This morning's story is about three mountains, three bare mountains, bare as in there was nothing on them, bare mountains. The mountains lived a fairly quiet life. They stood still under the sun in the daytime, and they stood still under the moon in the evening. One day, each mountain received a catalog. And the mountains were very excited because this had never happened before to them. So they started looking through their catalogs. And the first mountain came to the section on monkeys, and the monkeys looked wonderful. So the mountain ordered some monkeys. And the second mountain was drawn to the frogs section. They just looked marvelous. So the second mountain ordered some frogs. And the third mountain opened right to the badgers section and looked no further. Badgers would be perfect, she thought. So she ordered some badgers. At night, as night came, the mountains were so excited, it was each one woke up, and each found what they had ordered, monkeys and frogs and badgers. And all day the monkeys played with their new animals, and the animals enjoyed their new mountains. And soon the animals became hungry, but there was no food. The sun went down, and there was no place to keep warm, and everyone got hungry and very uncomfortable. And the monkeys, they wished that there was light because they liked to read at night, and there was no light. After the animals fell asleep, the mountains had a meeting. They must have been Unitarian Universalists because they had a meeting. The mountains just felt terrible. They only thought about how much fun it would be for them to have the animals. They never even considered if the animals would like their new homes. So the first mountain said, we must do everything we can so the animals won't leave us. The second mountain said, we must do everything because it's our duty. And the third mountain said, we will be good to the animals because we love them. And so the mountains got their catalogs out again. And the next day there was a big box of food at the foot of each mountain. And after breakfast, the animals were so happy, they sang to the mountains until lunchtime. And in the afternoon, there were more surprises. There were torches for the monkeys made of starlight, and bouncy balls for the frogs made from pebbles that flew across the mountainside. And for the badgers, there were tapes of dancing tunes put together by the wind. And when night came and it was cold again, the animals curled up in a cozy pile, and the mountain stood over them, making a warm shelter. The animals slept very soundly, except for one badger who came out to yawn at the moon and noticed the mountains were shivering with cold. So she opened one of the catalogs and knew just what to order. And the next day, 3 great big blankets arrived, decorated with grasses and flowers and shrubs. And that night, when the cold crept up, the animals wrapped the blankets around the mountains, and everybody was comfortable, and everybody was warm, and everyone was happy. So my question to you, friends, is, did you resonate with the mountains? I certainly do. Especially in these days of oh so strange time. I have gone in search of diversions and entertainment. For lonely mountains, it might be monkeys and frogs and badgers. For us locked down humans, perhaps Netflix, sourdough bread starter, and Zoom coffee dates and happy hours. There's nothing wrong with some diversion and entertainment in our lives. When boredom, the sameness of day in and night out comes upon us, Reaching for a catalog-like amusement certainly helps us move to a new space, out of our well-worn ruts, and that is good. And also when this world is all too much with us, and with so many options available with just a click or a swipe, it's so easy. Off we go. Hey, monkeys, frogs, badgers, wait for us. Yet diversions can also distract us as they tug us towards some fantasy world where we live not life here and now, in this present moment, but in some imagined world where we might pretend that what is all around us isn't happening, or will somehow magically stop happening. Wishful thinking is certainly a well-honed human trait. But now, as the losses mount, it is nearly impossible to distract ourselves away from the reality of what is happening due to this worldwide pandemic, to our families and friends, our neighbors and coworkers, to frontline workers we both know and also our strangers, to doctors and nurses and funeral home directors, to grocery checkout clerks and warehouse stockers and sanitation workers and farmers, to those incarcerated or detained or living without a house, to those trying to govern and organize and feed and clothe, to children and youth and new graduates and the newly furloughed, to those sick and lost, and to those who lost and are sick at heart. Their names and images and stories and plights are all around us, and they are with us. We hear them. We see them. It is nearly impossible to not be keenly aware of what is happening to our fellow beings right here and around the planet. Nearly impossible. And yet we are oh so human, and of course we will still try to turn away. Our hope, writes Judy Leaf, our hope is that if we keep all the distractedness going, we will not have to look at who we are, we will not have to feel what we feel, we will not have to see what we see. But we are seeing. I'll speak for myself here. The distractions aren't quite working anymore, at least not in the same way, because the reality is just too real. The longer this time of strangeness and upending of life goes on, the deeper our predicament, the more it's all around us, and it's impossible not to see it. And what we see, we feel. And what we feel can break our hearts. Though we may well try not to go there either, it's understandable that we try to protect our tender hearts with armor, with insulation, keeping them safe from the pain of our world. The sorrow of losing a dear companion, the sadness of lost dreams. It's reasonable, especially when there's so much hurt. The anxiety of an uncertain future, the despair of keeping body and soul together, the anger and confusion at missteps and misleading facts. It makes sense when the world aches so, the frustration of powerlessness, the worry of lost jobs, careers, income. There is so much to take in. We fear it will sweep us away, so understandably, we protect ourselves. And yet the poets and artists, the prophets and sages and philosophers counsel us. There is only one way through these valleys, and that indeed is passing through them, all the while keeping our eyes and our hearts open as we travel. It is how we are wakened, and also how we are prepared to keep going, to be swept along, but not away, how we are to act. Khalil Gibran writes, your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. Even as the stone of the fruit must break, that its heart may stand in the sun, so you must know pain. That its heart may stand in the sun. This is the heartbreaking truth about pain. It does something to and for us. Yet pain is not the end of the story, because the poet continues, and if you could keep your heart in wonder at the daily miracles of your life, your pain would not seem less wondrous than your joy. And if you could keep your heart in wonder at the daily miracles of your life, your pain would not seem less wondrous than your joy. You see, if we don't feel our pain, we can't feel much else either. Joy will be buried and wonder hidden, and love too will not be known. None of this is easy, and it must not be done alone. If there's anything that clearly unites us across the globe in this pandemic, it's that we are truly and inextricably interconnected and interdependent. We cannot do what needs doing alone. As we pass through the valleys, we see you, we say. As we walk on, we hear you, we say. What I understand this moment in our history is inviting us to is compassion with a capital C. The feeling we each have when we are moved by the suffering or the distress of someone else. Compassion in its original meaning is suffering with. It's a completely human attribute, although maybe, perhaps, mountains and badgers feel it too, and we just don't know it. But compassion is that moment, in the words of Catherine McTeague, the moment when we look into one another's faces and see their communion, the reflection of our own eyes. Compassion is when we are fully open to the experience of our sibling, our friend, and the stranger, and they, in turn, are open to ours. A mountain creates a shelter, and a badger wraps a blanket of meadows around her new friend. The suffering we are witnessing across our city, the country, our planet, and the compassion it is giving rise to right now is not just about any two people or even individuals. It is our dawning apprehension of collective suffering. It is the pain of the world itself, experienced in and through each of us. We are feeling pain for the world. Collective suffering on a scale perhaps never before understood, and collective compassion experienced in ways never before possible. You see, the other part of compassion, along with the suffering of pain with another, is the desire to relieve that anguish, to relieve it, not because, in the words of mountain number one, we need to, because our friends might leave us if we don't, and not in the words of mountain number two, because we have a duty, but because, as the third mountain confesses, we are moved by love. We seek to relieve suffering because we love. Without love, there is no compassion. And the love that emerges from compassion is as strong as the most solid of mountains. But here is the hard news, friends. There are no catalogs awaiting us with solutions that come in neat boxes delivered to our doorsteps. We must let compassion, yes, suffering with, stir in each of us the desire to be moved by love, to respond to the crises still unfolding before us. For the love that emerges from this shared suffering is strong stuff indeed, strong enough to unleash the creativity within and among and between us, and of which we were barely aware. It's the creativity of a 12-year-old using a 3D printer to create personal protective equipment for healthcare workers he has never and may never meet. It's the creativity of musicians playing to the empty streets of Malta, calling shut-in residents to their windows and doors to smile and wave and dance. It's the creativity of drive-up food pantries, of signs held up outside nursing home windows, of high school graduates' faces on the 6 o'clock news, of pay-it-forward meals for hospital workers, of families Zooming, Skyping, Google Meeting to check in and laugh and celebrate and cry and mourn, and to just be together, apart. See what our compassion is releasing. See the new world that brokenheartedness can create. From a shared story across the back fence to images beamed across the globe, what could we be building? What are we building? These are the fresh, tender, green shoots of a new way of being human together on this planet. Yes, they need tending and nurturing and need to be multiplied 1,000-fold. But these new shoots are coming not a moment too soon. The creativity we are witnessing and are a part of, this creativity born of, midwifed from deep compassion, is the missing piece to responding to the most significant challenge our species has ever faced, the one awaiting us on the other side of the pandemic, the planetary crisis of climate chaos. Unlike what we are experiencing here and now with COVID-19, we have all the information and all the technology to make the massive changes that are necessary. What is missing is a compassion deep enough to release the well springs of love needed to water the creativity locked inside each and every one of us. This is the creativity of artists and engineers and designers and poets, and also the creativity in each and every one of us who long for a brighter, more just day, not eventually, but now. For everyone who yearns for the beloved community, not in the next life, but in this one. It's the creativity of new renewable energy jobs in Appalachia because we feel the suffering of displaced coal miners. It's the reimagining of Philadelphia's century-old oil refinery in South Philadelphia into a green energy hub using local labor because we love our neighbors who have lived too long in the shadow of belching smokestacks. It's biking and walking so trees can breathe too. Local farming at the right scale so animals live well. New jobs with integrity so there is meaning to our labors. It is love, friends, that moves mountains. Love of one another, yes, but also love of life. Love of the spinning, blue-green earth which gifts us with life. Love of our common home, shared across space and time with sun and moon, wind and stardust, trees and flowers, monkeys, frogs and badgers, and their children, and ours too. We are temporary dwellers in this fair place, in hills and valleys, along shorelines and on uplands, in towns and cities near and far, in nations and on continents, on this small spinning ball. We come and we go, and others will come and go after we have gone, as others came and went before us. Each moment of our coming and going is precious. Each moment holds all the promises and all the possibilities of a new way of being human. May we walk the earth gently and touch and be touched by those we meet with the depth of compassion and the liberation of love. So may it be, and amen. Now let's join Amelia and Brittany in singing Carolyn McDade's Spirit of Life.